OK. Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, nous avons Dr. Daly. Elle termine sa formation en cardiologie à l'Université de Toronto, au Canada. Ses intérêts cliniques comprennent l'insuffisance cardiaque, la transplantation cardiaque et l'électrophysiologie. Elle est passionnée par l'enseignement et elle est presque une maîtrise en éducation médicale par l'Université de Dundee. Donc, you can start whenever.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Daly. Please call me Andrea. I understand that we're holding the questions till the end of the presentation, but please feel free to ask anything you like. I'm thrilled to be talking to you today about hypertension. Like Amanda was saying, I'm just finishing my internal medicine training and going into my cardiology training, so worked with this a fair bit and will be working with it quite a bit in the future. I have no financial disclosures, but I do want to say this is quite a big topic, and a lot of people dedicate their entire careers to this. So I am hoping to touch on some of the major points.
Do you want to pause for just a second and let Brigitte translate that?
Sure.
Okay.
Bonjour tout le monde, je suis Dr. Daly et vous pouvez m'appeler Andrea. Je sais qu'on va regarder les questions jusqu'à la fin, mais vous êtes libre de me demander ce que vous voulez. Et je finis, maintenant je suis en train de finir ma résidence en médecine interne et je suis très contente de vous parler à propos de l'hypertension. Je n'ai pas de divulgation financière à donner, mais je veux juste dire que le sujet dont on va parler est très, très grand et des personnes donnent toute leur carrière pour en parler. Voilà.
So I've included just a quick map here to say where Toronto is. I don't think that you've had any lectures from Toronto yet, so just in the southern part of Canada.
J'ai inclus une carte pour montrer où est Toronto, d'où je suis. Je ne sais pas si vous avez déjà eu des conférenciers de Toronto, mais voilà.
So my objectives for the lecture are the following. I would like for us to appreciate that hypertension may be sort of a low-hanging fruit in the sense of being able to impact health at an individual and a population level based on the prevalence of hypertension, the opportunities to treat it, and the sort of high-impact screening that we'll talk about. It's usually sort of a very straightforward entity to treat in the sense that, 95% of patients, have essential hypertension, but at the same time, given that it's a chronic illness, outcomes can be difficult to achieve for a variety of reasons, which we'll talk about. I'd like us to understand the etiology, diagnosis, evaluation, and treatment of hypertension as a cardiovascular risk factor, keeping that cardiovascular risk as a primary endpoint, and appreciate the opportunities for practice in non-communicable disease with local, national, and international interests.
Et les objectifs d'aujourd'hui, j'aimerais qu'on apprécie l'hypertension en tant que fruit à faible pendaison, ce qui veut dire que ça influe la santé à un niveau individuel et au niveau de la population. Et donc, traiter l'hypertension aura une très grande influence. L'hypertension est aussi généralement très simple, mais les résultats peuvent être difficiles à atteindre. Et près de 95% ont une hypertension essentielle, ce qui rend l'hypertension dure à traiter. Et il faut comprendre l'étiologie, le diagnostic, l'évaluation et le traitement de l'hypertension en tant que facteur de risque cardiovasculaire, tout en gardant le risque cardiovasculaire en tant que fin primaire. Et il faut apprécier les possibilités de pratique en cas de maladie non transmissible avec intérêt local, national et international.
The outline for what we're going to talk about is sort of the impact of hypertension, both in Haiti and internationally, and then get into some of the day-to-day sort of the details about hypertension in the clinical setting, and then briefly touch on the bigger picture and other ways to get involved in hypertension.
Et donc, ce dont on va parler aujourd'hui, c'est l'impact de l'hypertension et puis l'hypertension artérielle dans le cadre clinique. Et à la fin, là, une image plus éloignée, plus grande.
hypertension worldwide, I've included this graph here from the World Health Organization Global Risk Report. You can see that it obviously is very prevalent, as you all know. This is across low, middle, and high-income countries, and it's projected to affect 1.56 billion people by 2020.
Et voici un graphe à propos de l'hypertension mondialement. Vous pouvez voir qu'elle est très prévalente dans plusieurs pays. Et elle est projetée à affecter 1,5 milliard de personnes d'ici 2025.
So specifically in Haiti, and this is also from the World Health Organization non-communicable diseases profile. So while the majority is still from communicable diseases, 24% mortality is from cardiovascular risk. The estimate is that the probability of dying between the ages of 30 and 70 from a non-communicable disease is 24%.
Et en Haïti en particulier, voici un graphe aussi qui est du World Health Organization, qui dit que la probabilité de mourir en 30 et 70 ans d'une maladie non transmissible est de 24%.
I wanted to focus on vascular risk, and in terms of overall cardiovascular risk and what contributes to cardiovascular risk, I've included this quote. Let me read it out and we'll talk about why I included this. So cardiovascular risk factors include low fruit and vegetable intake, lack of exercise, alcohol and tobacco use, high body mass index, high cholesterol, high blood glucose, and high blood pressure. These risk factors are responsible for more than due to heart disease, the leading cause of death in the world. Now, in Haiti, I know that the population is variable from rural to urban populations, but some populations in particular are known to have these issues. So there's less issue with low fruit and vegetable intake. They're very active. Alcohol and tobacco is not a problem as it is in some other places in the world. Neither is high body mass index or high blood glucose. And I'll give some stats specific to Haiti. And so this is why I'm presenting high blood pressure as a low-hanging fruit, in the sense that this may be a major contributor, particularly in Haiti, to cardiovascular death.
Et je veux me concentrer sur les facteurs de risque cardiovasculaire. J'ai inclus cette citation. Je vais la lire d'abord. C'est la faible consommation de fruits et de légumes, le manque d'exercice, consommation d'alcool et de tabac, l'indice de masse corporelle élevé, les taux élevés de cholestérol, la glycémie élevée et l'hypertension artérielle sont des facteurs de risque responsables pour plus de la moitié des décès dus à une maladie cardiaque. C'est la principale cause de décès dans le monde. Et je sais que la population de Haïti varie beaucoup entre population rurale et la population de ville, mais les Haïtiens sont connus pour avoir des fruits et des végétaux relativement élevés, les niveaux d'exercice aussi élevés, et IMC plutôt bas. Donc, assister aux facteurs de risque qui sont élevés serait une très bonne solution pour diminuer les maladies cardiovasculaires.
So specifically in Haiti, to present a few numbers, the estimated smoking risk, and this is drawn from a variety of sources, including the World Health Organization and this other study from 2017 from Daly. So you can see the numbers here. I won't read them out, but overall you can see that hypertension is quite prevalent, and that these numbers are actually quite conservative estimates, and really in a lot of populations it'll reach to at least 47%, and this increases on an age basis, which we'll talk about. So in terms of what might have the highest impact in terms of impacting population health, you can see that hypertension is quite prevalent. The dyslipidemia section I've left out. There are some estimates, but they may or may not be all that reliable. But overall cardiovascular risk has been assessed with taking into account dyslipidemia and then removing that from the equation. And overall, from a population health strategy, dyslipidemia may not be the most efficient disease process to target anyway. So I've sort of semi on purpose left this one out.
Et j'ai aussi inclus ces informations pour Haïti à propos des facteurs de risque. Et ceci vient de plusieurs sources, différentes sources. Et vous pouvez voir que l'hypertension est assez prévalente et que dans certaines populations, près de 40% de la population a l'hypertension, ce qui continue encore à s'élever. Je n'ai pas rempli la partie de dyslipidémie, même s'il y a quelques estimations, mais on n'est pas sûr qu'elles peuvent être suivies. Et c'est pas aussi la meilleure façon pour enlever la maladie. C'est pour ça que je n'ai pas rempli cette partie du tableau.
So I wanted to look at this, so hypertension prevalence by age. So from a screening perspective, you can see that because it's so common, screening the population can be quite high yield. And so I circled these numbers here at the end. So in the age category, once you hit the age category of 50 to 59 years old, you're looking at least 58% of the population that will have hypertension. Also quite high in the 2 decades preceding, so by the time you're in that 30 to 39, you're already at 30%. And if you look at the as well, or 50 category hypertension, additional 25% have pre-hypertension. So this is a very large population.
You were cutting out a minute ago, Andrea. I don't know if you, sorry.
Was I cutting out?
Yeah.
Yeah, just in the middle of that.
Oh, sure. Let's just highlight then that for the 50 to 59-year-olds, the prevalence, especially if you include the pre-hypertensive population, is very significant, and so screening can be very efficient. There's a very large population that at least some patient education, plus or minus medications and other interventions, would be useful.
Et le dépistage d'une population peut être à haut rendement et dépendamment de la catégorie d'âge, on peut voir que l'hypertension est assez prévalente. Par exemple, dans une population de 50 à 59 ans, la prévalence est près de 60%, ce qui est très élevé, surtout si on inclut aussi les personnes qui ont la pré-hypertension. Et ce qui est très important serait l'éducation du patient et non seulement les médicaments.
Other interesting findings about hypertension in Haiti were the following. The same study published this year found that 51% were unaware of their diagnosis, 10% were aware and not treated, and of those that were treated, 40% were uncontrolled, while 60% were controlled. These are actually really very, very good numbers in a variety of estimates across the world. 60% control isn't really all that bad, and there's a lot of reasons that we struggle to effectively treat chronic disease. But so anyway, just an idea that this 40% are treated and not controlled, and then of course there's still a population that is not diagnosed at all because of a lack of access to health care, a variety of reasons.
Et voici quelques nombres à propos de Haïti. On peut voir que 50% ne savent pas qu'ils ont l'hypertension, 10% savent mais ne sont pas traités, 40% sont traités mais non contrôlés, et 60% sont traités et ont leur hypertension contrôlée. Et on peut savoir que ceux-ci sont de très bons nombres comparés au reste du monde, mais quand même, près de 50% ne savent même pas qu'ils ont l'hypertension, et ceci est probablement parce qu'ils n'ont pas accès à la médecine ou d'autres raisons.
Okay, and I wanted to highlight the regional differences, and so at the bottom of this graph here, you can see that difference between rural Haiti, which suggests 45% prevalence in women and 39% in men, and then in Port-au-Prince, which has up to 67% in women and 69% in men. And some of the suggestion of that is related to activity level and access to fruits and vegetables. But some of the details of why this difference exists and how true this difference really is are still need to be replicated.
J'ai aussi inclus un graphe à propos des différences régionales. Ruralement, il y a 45% des... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
45% de l'hypertension est prévalente chez les femmes et 39% des hommes ont l'hypertension. Ceci est probablement dû à l'activité et l'accès des fruits, mais on ne sait pas exactement pourquoi et les raisons doivent être expliquées.
We'll talk now about a few reasons why we care about hypertension and some of the devastating consequences of it. So the ones that we'll talk about, although there are many, are congestive heart failure, stroke, renal failure, coronary and peripheral vascular disease. And unfortunately, people of African descent are more prone to having all of these complications than age and comorbidity matched individuals from other backgrounds.
Et nous allons parler de certaines conséquences de l'hypertension artérielle. Ceux-ci sont l'insuffisance cardiaque congestive, l'accident vasculaire cérébral et l'insuffisance rénale. Malheureusement, les personnes de descendance africaine sont plus sujettes à toutes ces complications que des individus qui ont le même âge et comorbides d'autres descendances.
Okay. So specifically for congestive heart failure, there was one study in a series of 247 patients admitted to hospital for heart failure. 27% were found to have, and this is on echocardiography, to have hypertensive cardiomyopathy. And in this study, there was an extra 45% that actually had a dilated cardiomyopathy. And a lot of these may also represent hypertensive disease in the sense that this is burnt out hypertensive cardiomyopathy. So I would say that this 27% of admissions for heart failure is actually also a conservative measure of how many are affected by it. There was an earlier, and hypertension increases the risk of both systolic and diastolic heart failure. So in the figure here, I've shown more of the sort of middle range effect of hypertension on the heart muscle, and so you can see how hypertrophied the whole heart muscle is here. But over time, as the heart weakens, it will dilate as well, and so you can get both phenotypes in the end.
Et les conséquences de l'hypertension sur l'insuffisance cardiaque congestive. Il y a une étude dans laquelle on a étudié 247 patients hospitalisés pour insuffisance cardiaque, dont 24% ont une cardiomyopathie hypertensive. Et les résultats antérieurs ont suggéré que l'hypertension principale est présente chez 45% de l'insuffisance cardiaque. Et ceci n'inclut pas la cardiomyopathie dilatée. Et on sait maintenant aussi que l'hypertension augmente le risque d'arrêt cardiaque systolique et diastolique. Vous pouvez voir sur la figure les effets de l'hypertension sur le muscle cardiaque. Mais avec le temps, le muscle se fatigue et se dilate aussi, et vous finirez par voir les deux phénotypes.
Consequence of hypertension with respect to stroke. So hypertension, as you know, causes both ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke. And Haiti has a very high stroke rate, up to 176 per 100,000. And this is double the rates in a lot of other Caribbean countries, and may be associated with the high rate of hypertension. So 30% case fatality and obviously very high morbidity. There are many studies that show that long-term reduction, by long-term I mean over 5 years, reduction in blood pressure by only 5 to 6 millimeters of mercury can reduce stroke rate by 35 to 40%. So very dramatic impact by controlling blood pressure.
Et les conséquences de l'hypertension artérielle sur l'accident vasculaire cérébral. On sait maintenant qu'il provoque les accidents vasculaires cérébraux ischémiques et hémorragiques. Haïti est rapporté à avoir l'un des taux vasculaires les plus élevés au monde, qui s'élève à 176 sur 100 000, ce qui est presque le double que dans d'autres pays aux Caraïbes, et cause près de 30% de décès, et a aussi haute morbidité. Et la réduction à long terme, ce qui veut dire près de 5 ans, de la pression du sang de 5 à 6 millilitres de mercure, réduit l'hypertension de 35 à 40%, ce qui est une réduction très dramatique et qui est faite par le contrôle.
With respect to renal disease, the pathology is nephrosclerosis and cellular senescence, which is induced. And unfortunately, this can happen even with mild hypertension over a long period of time. So whereas, a lot of strategies are targeted at treating more severe hypertension, this is one of the side effects that you will see even with people with only mild elevations in their blood pressure. Of note is that people that do have renal disease secondary to their hypertension will generally, this isn't necessary, because it happens over such a long period of time, these patients will often already have hypertensive retinopathy and left ventricular hypertrophy.
Et les conséquences de l'hypertension sur la maladie rénale, c'est causée pathologiquement par la néphrosclérose et la sénescence cellulaire. Elle se produit même avec l'hypertension légère sur une longue période de temps. Et les patients souffrant d'insuffisance rénale sur une longue période de temps auront généralement aussi une rétinopathie hypertensive et une hypertension du ventricule, une hypertrophie du ventricule gauche.
Finally, with respect to coronary and peripheral vascular disease, hypertension certainly increases the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. And as an estimate of that in the InterHeart study, hypertension accounted for 18% of all of the population attributable risk for a first myocardial infarction. Overall, in Haiti, the estimates that of ischemic heart disease are actually low compared to other populations, including that which would have been in the InterHeart study. Nonetheless, it's an important risk with hypertension.
Et les conséquences de l'hypertension sur la maladie vasculaire coronaire et périphérique, les patients souffrant d'hypertension ont 63% de risque plus élevé de développer une maladie cardiovasculaire. Dans l'étude InterHeart, l'hypertension représentait 18% du risque attribuable du risque d'infarctus du myocarde. Et les infarctus ischémiques, en général, est plutôt bas en Haïti.
So in summary for this section, hypertension is very common. It's undertreated in the sense that it may be underdiagnosed for a variety of reasons, and that even those that are diagnosed are not always well controlled, which is the same in all populations. And so the treatment of hypertension has the ability to significantly impact population health, including both economic and healthcare incomes, because as you can imagine, the cost of managing a patient with heart failure or renal disease is quite a bit higher than the cost of actually treating their hypertension.
Et le résumé de cette section est que l'hypertension est très grande et que l'hypertension est sous-traitée. Elle reste pas toujours contrôlée. Le point clé est que le traitement de l'hypertension a la capacité d'influencer de manière significative la santé de la population, y compris les résultats économiques et sanitaires, parce que vous pouvez imaginer le coût de traiter des maladies cardiaques et les maladies rénales est très élevé pour chaque patient.
Okay. So hypertension is generally, in sort of broad strokes, defined as systolic blood pressure greater than 140 or diastolic blood pressure greater than 90. In patients with diabetes, there's some evidence for treating to a more aggressive target of a systolic blood pressure of greater than 130 and diastolic blood pressure greater than 80.
Et la définition de l'hypertension est la pression artérielle systolique de plus de 140 ou la pression artérielle diastolique de plus de 90. Chez les patients atteints de diabète, le but est un peu plus agressif. La pression artérielle systolique devrait être de plus de 130 et la pression artérielle diastolique de plus de 80 pour diagnostiquer l'hypertension.
So as I alluded to before, the vast majority of hypertension is primary hypertension, which is a result of environmental and genetic factors. You will occasionally come across patients with secondary hypertension, estimated at about 5%, which can be due to chronic kidney disease from other etiologies, renal artery stenosis, hyperaldosteronism, pheochromocytoma, and sleep apnea, particularly in obese populations. And so this is really its own talk in itself. I won't focus very much on this, except to say that you should be thinking of secondary hypertension in patients that have been very difficult to treat or are diagnosed with hypertension at a very young age.
Les causes de l'hypertension, il y a l'hypertension primaire, près de 95% chez la majorité de la population, et ceci est le résultat de facteurs environnementaux et génétiques. L'hypertension peut aussi parfois être secondaire, près de 5% de la population, et ceci est très occasionnel. Elle peut être due à la maladie rénale chronique, la sténose de l'artère rénale, l'hyperaldostéronisme, le phéochromocytome, et l'apnée du sommeil, surtout chez la population obèse. Et vous devriez penser à l'hypertension secondaire chez des patients qui sont durs à traiter ou bien chez qui l'hypertension a été diagnostiquée à un âge très jeune.
Diagnosis of hypertension is very much dependent on how you measure blood pressure, for one thing, which is obvious, I suppose. But there's a lot of components that go into this and how to get a good measurement. And so for one thing, you have to have people that are trained in measuring blood pressure, whether, you'll be doing it yourself in clinic or whether there's outreach clinics and you have nurses or nurse practitioners or hypertension consultants that are helping you take the actual measurement. There's a variety of different machines that are used. The gold standard really are electronic cuffs. Having said that, that's not always possible in all clinics. The environment is very important to consider as well, and so usually we recommend that patients sit quietly in their room for 5 minutes if possible, not talking to anyone, just trying to relax, and because often patients, so they've come into clinic, they however they got there, they walked up the stairs, so their blood pressure may be a little bit higher when they get into clinic for a lot of different reasons. Important to have an appropriate cuff size to get a good measurement as well. The position of the patient is very important, and so if you're going to measure it on their arm, it should be at heart level. They should be sitting with their feet on the ground, not with their legs crossed, and just sort of sitting quietly. And then the ideal really is to have multiple measurements, both within the same visit. Often when we use electronic cuffs, they'll measure it up to 5 or 6 times and then discard the first and sometimes the last one as well, and then average the ones in between. So generally at least 2 measurements averaged is best, and if you can do 3 and discard the first one, then average, then that's ideal. And then we also, when we're talking about a hypertensive diagnosis, it also means multiple measurements over time, and so we'll talk a little bit about that too.
Et le diagnostic de l'hypertension se fait en mesurant la tension artérielle, ce qui a besoin d'assez d'entraînement. Il s'est fait à la clinique avec parfois des consultants. Et généralement, c'est utilisé par la machine électronique, mais je sais que parfois ceci n'est pas possible. Il faut laisser le patient s'asseoir 5 minutes en salle, que la personne soit relaxée. Parce que peut-être en arrivant à la clinique, le patient est monté des escaliers et ceci a causé la tension à être plus élevée au moment même. La taille de la manchette devrait être adéquate et la manchette devrait être positionnée au niveau du cœur si vous êtes en train de mesurer l'hypertension au niveau de la main. Et parfois, il faut prendre plusieurs mesures. Parfois, les mesures sont prises jusqu'à 5 ou 6 fois. Et puis, on fait la moyenne de toutes ces fois. Mais généralement, il est fait 2 à 3 fois, mais aussi à plusieurs reprises au cours du temps, afin de diagnostiquer l'hypertension.
So as I said, ideally you would want to reconfirm a blood pressure at a second visit greater than 140 on 80. If the first blood pressure that you're getting is very high, greater than 180, or for whatever reason, logistical reason, the second visit is problematic, you might consider treating after only one visit. I will say here that so that this graph here is showing people with normal or comparison basically of normal of office blood pressure to home blood pressure. And so obviously people that have normal blood pressure in the office and at home they're just normal, they don't have hypertension. But there is a population that has high blood pressure in the office but normal blood pressure at home. This is called white coat hypertension. There is the reverse, although it's less common to have normal office blood pressure but high home blood pressure, and this is called masked hypertension. And then people that have it in both locations are obviously just hypertensive. So sometimes if this is suspected or someone is sort of anxious in the office, you may and have them do blood measurement at home if possible.
Idéalement, il faut reconfirmer l'hypertension de plus de 140 sur 90 lors d'une deuxième visite. Mais si la pression artérielle systolique est plus élevée que 180 ou si une deuxième visite est problématique, vous pouvez traiter après une seule visite. Il y a aussi dans ce tableau, vous pouvez voir que une personne qui a une tension normale au bureau et à votre bureau et à la maison est considérée normotensif. Si une personne a une hypertension dans votre bureau, mais une tension normale chez eux à la maison, ceci est nommé une hypertension causée par le white coat. Et si une personne a une hypertension haute à la maison, mais normale chez vous au bureau, ceci est nommé l'hypertension masquée. Et si une personne a une hypertension haute à la maison et à l'office, ceci est une hypertension artérielle. Et ceci est bien pour garder dans votre tête que si quelqu'un paraît anxieux au bureau, il serait bien de leur demander de mesurer leur hypertension à la maison pour voir si c'est une hypertension artérielle due au white coat.
I wanted to introduce sort of an approach that I use for any diagnosis, and that, so when you're assessing a patient, obviously you're going to look at your history, your physical exam, and the investigations that you're going to order. And it's useful for me anyway to think about it from the sense of what causes this disease, what are the characteristics of the disease, and what are the consequences of that disease, just as a way of organizing your approach to all three of the history, physical exam, and investigation.
Donc, une approche de tout diagnostic que moi j'utilise, généralement vous allez penser à propos de l'histoire clinique de votre patient, de leur examen physique et des labos que vous allez commander. Une approche pour n'importe quel diagnostic serait aussi les causes, les caractéristiques et les conséquences.
So, from a history perspective, with respect to this, so you can think in your first evaluation, a history of sleep apnea, which may be suggested by snoring, a history which may be given by their partner, or other secondary causes. Ask about their lifestyle, their diet, and activity level, social history, including what are going to be your options for medications from a financial perspective, a family history, and then other medications. So NSAIDs, so like Advil, ibuprofen, steroids, migraine medications, cold medications, herbal medications, and recreational drugs can all artificially or permanently elevate the blood pressure. So important to ask about all of these on your history.
Et en prenant votre histoire, il faudra poser les questions qui est mis en évidence par un ronflement ou bien un ronflement reporté par le partenaire. Vous pouvez aussi penser aux autres causes secondaires, au mode de vie, le régime, l'activité, l'histoire sociale, l'alcool et les finances, l'histoire de famille et les médicaments que le patient prend, comme les AINS, les stéroïdes, les médicaments contre la migraine, contre le rhume, les médicaments à base de plantes et les drogues récréatives.
In terms of characteristics, very short slide because it is often asymptomatic. If it's very severe, you can have headaches, vision changes, chest pain, and dyspnea, but these things won't necessarily be present.
Et les caractéristiques, cette page est assez petite parce que c'est vraiment souvent asymptomatique. Il peut se manifester si c'est agressif avec les maux de tête, les changements de vision, les douleurs thoraciques et la dyspnée.
Then the consequences is sort of an important one because it really is going to impact what your incentives are to offer treatment. And so you want to get a really good history with respect to stroke, myocardial infarction or angina, heart failure, peripheral arterial disease, erectile dysfunction, which can be a sign of atherosclerosis as well, and also get a sense of their other cardiovascular risk factors such as renal disease, diabetes, dyslipidemia, and a tobacco history.
Et les conséquences sont très importantes parce qu'elles pourraient influencer votre motivation pour donner le traitement. Les maladies cardiovasculaires comme l'accident cérébral, l'infarctus du myocarde, l'angine de poitrine, l'insuffisance cardiaque, la maladie artérielle périphérique, la dysfonction érectile qui peut être causée par l'athérosclérose. D'autres facteurs de risque cardiovasculaire comme la maladie rénale, diabète, la dyslipidémie et une histoire de tabagisme.
Moving on to the physical exam with the same framework of causes, characteristics, and consequences. So I included body mass index here, thinking about sleep apnea. There are other sort of dermatologic findings of secondary causes of hypertension. You look for diabetic skin changes, and so we'll change your treatment plan. And then also signs of severe dyslipidemia, such as xanthelasma and xanthoma. The characteristics, obviously, you want to do a full set of vital signs. In a cardiac exam, looking for other either pre-existing cardiac disease, for example, and then a fundoscopy exam to assess for retinopathy. And then from a consequences perspective, the cardiac exam is going to focus specifically on left ventricular hypertrophy, left ventricular dilation, and also secondary valvular diseases. And then a focused neurological exam looking for signs of previous stroke, which they may or may not be aware of. And then a peripheral arterial exam can also be useful.
Et l'examen physique avec la même division de causes, caractéristiques et conséquences. Les causes peuvent être l'indice de masse corporelle, les signes de causes secondaires, comme les changements cutanés de diabétique, ici la dyslipidémie est très agressive, on peut voir le xanthelasme et le xanthome. Les caractéristiques seraient les signes vitaux, l'examen cardiaque et la fundoscopie. Et les conséquences pourraient être étudiées par un examen cardiaque en regardant les murmures cardiaques, le PMI, le déplacement à cause de la dilatation et le rythme. L'examen neurologique en cherchant des indices d'accidents cérébral anciens dont ils ne sont probablement peut-être pas qui n'ont probablement pas remarqué, et les impulsions périphériques.
In terms of investigations then, in blood work, you can look for creatinine, electrolytes, blood glucose, an HbA1c if you get it, and a lipid profile, urinalysis, and ECG. So, and then if there was something that came up on history that was suggestive of you to a secondary cause, then you could do targeted investigations for this, but it's not recommended to screen for secondary causes in all patients with hypertension.
Et dans votre enquête, vous pouvez faire un examen de sang qui inclut la créatinine, les électrolytes, la glycémie, le HbA1c, le profil lipidique, une analyse d'urine, le ECG, et seulement si vous avez des causes de suspecter une cause secondaire, alors vous pourrez faire une enquête pour les causes secondaires.
I've included this graph here just as a simple way of sort of putting all of this together in terms of their cardiovascular risk, because we've talked about how you're going to be assessing them for peripheral arterial disease and all of these things. And so these tables, which are available online, are a very easy way to categorize your patient's cardiovascular risk. And so you can see that it's separated here. So this table is specifically for patients without diabetes, but there is a similar table for patients with diabetes. And so you just have to select the right table, select whether they're male or female, smokers or non-smokers, and then what their systolic blood pressure is. And that can give you an estimate of what their risk is. And also I've noted that I did include a table here that has cholesterol at the bottom, but there is also a table for both patients with and without diabetes that doesn't include cholesterol and will still give you an estimate of risk. So whether or not you do have their lab values back or whether or not you were able to order them at all, you can still get a good estimate of the cardiovascular risk.
Dans ce tableau, vous pouvez sélectionner les caractéristiques de votre patient, s'il est mâle, femelle, l'âge et la tension qu'ils ont, ce qui vous aidera à prévoir leur risque de maladie cardiovasculaire. Et j'ai aussi inclus le tableau dans lequel vous pouvez mettre leur niveau de cholestérol. Mais ceci, si vous n'avez pas exactement les laboratoires, vous pourrez quand même savoir c'est quoi le risque de maladie cardiovasculaire.
So key point for treatment is that the goal of hypertension is decreased cardiovascular risk. This is all of your endpoint, and this is really what's driving towards.
Et le point clé, c'est que l'objectif du traitement de l'hypertension est une diminution de la maladie cardiovasculaire.
We'll talk about treatment. I'm aware of the time, so we'll go through this maybe a little bit more quickly, and then you can ask questions at the end. So there is a large component of non-pharmacologic treatment, including patient education, weight loss, possibility of this DASH diet, which we'll talk about, salt intake, which importantly is both lower sodium and increased potassium, and then also pharmacologic treatment.
Et on va parler des traitements. Je sais que le temps est serré, donc je vais en parler un peu rapidement, mais vous pourriez me poser des questions à la fin. Les traitements non pharmacologiques seraient l'éducation du patient, la perte de poids, le régime DASH, de diminuer le sel dans leur régime et augmenter le potassium, et pharmacologiquement.
So because we're talking about chronic disease, it's very important to approach this quite a lot differently than you would like a broken bone, for example. So you need to be able to communicate with the patient in simple language, pictures if you have to, and really check their understanding, because if you can give someone a prescription for anything, but obviously if they're not going to take it on a regular basis over a long period of time, then it really is no point. So having them understand what you are thinking and what you are trying to prevent in them can be very useful. Because of the high prevalence of stroke in Haiti, you might be able to ask about whether or not they know anyone that has had a stroke, and whether or not and that this might be able to sort of give you a common ground, or a common goal is to prevent that in them. Also, things like action planning can be useful in talking about chronic disease.
Et dans l'éducation du patient, ceci est une maladie chronique, ce qui rend plus dur d'en parler et de traiter qu'une cassure d'os. La communication est très importante. Il faudra utiliser une langue simple, utiliser peut-être des photos, vérifier leur compréhension, créer un plan d'action ensemble. Et puisqu'il y a beaucoup d'accidents vasculaires cérébraux à Haïti, vous pourrez leur demander s'ils connaissent quelqu'un qui en a eu un, et ceci vous donnera un terrain commun pour le traitement.
So I've included this graph here. It's a very busy graph, but it does have a lot of sort of interesting and important components to chronic care management. So I won't go through all of it now, but if you have time to go through it, it does have a lot of good components, including community support, the patient's belief that change is possible, and all of the different components that contribute to effective chronic care management.
Et j'ai inclus ce graphe qui aide à traiter les maladies chroniques. Ce graphe est très important, mais on ne va pas y aller en détail. Vous pouvez voir par exemple qu'il y a les liens communautaires, comment faire croire aux patients que le changement est possible, et vous pourrez le voir dans votre temps.
Talk about sodium. So the World Health Organization target is less than 4 grams per day, and some estimate that the Haitians consume up to 30 to 35 grams of sodium per day, and this is for a variety of reasons, partly because it's used as a food preservative, but in comparison to the average sort of recipe, even like a soup recipe from other places, the salt taste, or as an acquired taste, is actually quite high in Haitian recipes. So all these things can be, for these reasons, very difficult to overcome this issue of high salt.
Le sodium, la cible devrait être de moins de 4 grammes par jour, mais certains estiment que les Haïtiens consomment 30 à 35 grammes de sodium par jour. Ceci est dû parce que le sel est utilisé en tant que conservateur alimentaire, mais aussi parce que c'est un goût acquis, et de grandes quantités sont utilisées dans les recettes comme dans les soupes.
So given that sodium intake may be difficult to impact, although obviously decreasing from 30 grams per day would be ideal, there is a blunting effect of the effect of sodium on the blood pressure by increasing potassium intake, particularly in people of African ancestry. So the mechanism of this isn't actually entirely clear, but if you are not able to get the sodium intake down, increasing potassium intake is actually a good alternative or adjunct to that effort. So the recommended potassium intake is 4.7 grams per day, assuming that they don't have any kidney disease and are not at risk of hyperkalemia otherwise. And so as an example, things like mangoes would have 320 milligrams of potassium, and plantains have 893 milligrams of potassium, so quite a lot.
L'apport en potassium est un peu plus dur à contrôler, mais le cible devrait être de 4,7 grammes par jour, ce qui est parce que le potassium émousse l'effet de l'hypertension, en particulier chez ceux qui ont une descendance africaine. Le mécanisme est non entièrement clair, mais la cible, comme on a dit, est de 4,7 grammes par jour, en supposant l'absence de maladie rénale et de risque d'hypercalémie. Et par exemple, les mangues contiennent 320 mg de potassium et les plantains 893 mg.
So this DASH diet is something that has good evidence. I won't talk about it for too long, but it's a diet that would be high in fruits and vegetables, low fat, dairy, whole grains, poultry, fish, and that's able. And it has been shown to cause a big change in systolic blood pressure, accessible and affordable.
Le régime DASH a une haute teneur en fruits, légumes, les produits laitiers, faible en gras, les grains entiers, les volailles, les poissons et les noix. Le sucre est restreint. Et ce régime a été prouvé de diminuer la tension artérielle systolique.
Okay, so moving on to pharmacologic treatment and when to initiate treatment. So if the blood pressure is less than 160 on 100, you can trial lifestyle interventions first. But as we talked about in the history and physical exam, in the presence of end organ dysfunction, so things like left ventricular hypertrophy, renal disease, retinopathy, all of these things, or a lot of cardiovascular risk from other comorbidities, these things would all push you towards earlier treatment and more aggressive treatment. And you can also consider adding 2 therapeutic agents off the bat if the patient's blood pressure is greater than either 20 millimeters of mercury systolic or 10 millimeters of mercury diastolic above what their target would be. And you can titrate their doses every 2 to 3 weeks.
Et le traitement pharmacologique peut être, on peut le donner pour les interventions sur le mode de vie si la tension est plus de 160 sur 100. Cependant, s'il y a un dysfonctionnement d'organes final ou des difficultés logistiques dans le suivi, on peut commencer la pharmacologie pour une tension de moins de 160 sur 100. Et on peut aussi considérer un traitement combinatoire précoce si la tension est plus élevée de 20 sur 10 mg de mercure au-dessus de la cible et on titre les doses toutes les 2 ou 3 semaines.
Okay, so we'll talk briefly about all of the drug classes that are available. So ACE inhibitors provide renin-angiotensin system blockade. Side effects are cough, angioedema, hyperkalemia, and increased creatinine, which is an increased creatinine which will be stable over time, is expected, and it's actually safe. So not something to be concerned about unless it keeps going up. ACE inhibitors have all of their own indications separate from hypertension. So in a patient that has heart failure, they've had a myocardial infarction in the past, they have left ventricular dysfunction or chronic kidney disease, these are an extra incentive to use this agent as opposed to something else if you're able. And these are not to be combined with angiotensin receptor blockers, but these are generally interchangeable. The angiotensin receptor blockers work by the same mechanism essentially in terms of affecting the renin-angiotensin system. They don't cause cough, they rarely cause angioedema, but they also have that similar effect on increasing the creatinine.
Et la première classe de médicaments dont on va parler sont les ACE inhibitors. Le mécanisme est le blocage du système rénine-angiotensine et les effets secondaires sont la toux, l'angioëdème, l'hypercalémie et l'augmentation de la créatinine qui est sans danger et qui est normale dans ce cas. Et ces médicaments sont indiqués en cas d'insuffisance cardiaque, de post-infraction, dysfonction ventriculaire gauche et de maladies rénales chroniques. Et dans ces cas, vous devrez. Il ne faudra pas les combiner avec les bloqueurs des récepteurs de l'angiotensine qui ne provoquent pas la toux, l'œdème, mais ont un effet similaire sur l'agglomération et donc l'augmentation de la.
So thiazides, they increase the excretion of sodium in the kidney, and they're actually most effective in combination with ACE inhibitors or ARBs. As I said, they're interchangeable, and also potentiated by calcium channel blockers. The side effects of this are in patients with gout, it can precipitate attacks.
Et la deuxième classe, c'est les thiazides qui augmentent l'expression du sodium. Le plus efficace est en combinaison avec les ARBs, qui sont les bloqueurs des récepteurs de l'angiotensine, et également potentialisés par les bloqueurs des canaux calciques. Les effets secondaires sont le gout.
Calcium channel blockers block flow of calcium into the intercellular space in arterial smooth muscle. There's two separate classes of calcium channel blockers, which are the dihydropyridines of amlodipine and nifedipine, and then the non-dihydropyridines of diltiazem and verapamil. The non-dihydropyridines have a little bit less blood pressure effect, and they also have negative inotropic and chronotropic effects on the heart, so they're contraindicated in systolic heart failure, and should also be used with caution in combination with beta blockers because of the negative chronotropic effect. The main side effect of calcium channel blockers is peripheral edema, which is actually dose dependent, and so if you find someone has intolerable peripheral edema secondary to it, you can try decreasing the dose just a little.
Une autre classe de médicaments, c'est les bloqueurs des canaux de calcium. Le mécanisme est de bloquer le flux de calcium dans l'espace intracellulaire, dans le muscle artériel. Les deux groupes de médicaments seraient les dihydropyridines, qui sont amlodipine et nifedipine, et les non-dihydrodipines, qui sont diltiazem et verapamil. Ils ont moins d'effets de pression sanguine, moins d'effets négatifs non chroniques et inotropes négatifs. Ils sont contre-indiqués à l'insuffisance cardiaque systolique. Il faut faire attention en combinaison avec les beta blockers. Leurs effets secondaires sont l'œdème périphérique.
So getting on to beta blockers, they have special indications in heart failure, post-MI, and also a good treatment for angina. So any patient that has these, it's a good option. The side effects are sexual dysfunction, fatigue, and decreased exercise capacity in some, although especially in younger populations, but in general, they are quite well tolerated.
Et dans la classe de médicaments des bêta-blockers, ils sont indiqués pour une insuffisance cardiaque, post-IM et une angine de poids. Leurs effets secondaires ne sont pas drastiques et ils sont généralement bien tolérés, surtout chez les jeunes.
Alpha blockers prevent arterial vasoconstriction. They're also most effective in combination with a diuretic. And because this is also a treatment for benign prostatic hypertrophy, it's a good option in a patient that is treated for that anyway.
La classe de médicaments des bloqueurs alpha ont pour mécanisme la prévention de la vasoconstriction artérielle. Et c'est le plus efficace en combinaison avec un diurétique et aussi utilisé en traitement pour hypertrophie bénigne de la prostate.
Centrally acting agents like clonidine and alpha-methyl-dopa reduce sympathetic activation, and they have side effects of drowsiness and dry mouth.
La classe de médicaments d'agents d'action centrale, clonidine et alpha-méthyldopa, réduisent l'activation sympathique et ont pour effet secondaire la somnolence et la bouche sèche.
And then finally, the direct vasodilators like hydralazine and minoxidil have side effects of fluid retention and tachycardia, and they're also most effective in combination with diuretics and beta blockers.
Et la classe de médicaments des vasodilatateurs directs, hydralazine et minoxidil, ont pour effet secondaire la rétention des liquides et la tachycardie. Ils sont le plus efficaces combinés avec les diurétiques et les bêta-bloqueurs.
And then mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists like spironolactone, they're also indicated in heart failure with a mortality benefit in severe heart failure. Side effects are gynecomastia and sexual dysfunction, particularly with spironolactone. There is a second mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist called eplerenone. Unfortunately, it's very expensive and not really used all that commonly. And then it also can cause hyperkalemia. So definitely to be used with caution in patients that are also on ACE inhibitors or ARBs.
Et la classe de médicaments des antagonistes des récepteurs minéralocorticoïdes, dont le spironolactone, ont pour effet secondaire la gynécomastie et la dysfonction sexuelle, surtout pour spironolactone, et l'hyperkaliémie, donc ils devraient être utilisés en faisant très attention si vous les combinez avec les ARB ou les ACE, et ils sont indiqués pour l'insuffisance cardiaque.
To put all of this together then, when in a patient that has hypertension and nothing else that you're considering in terms of the other consequences, a good first-line agent in patients with African ancestry is a calcium channel blocker or a thiazide diuretic. And then this whole chart here is from the American Society of Hypertension and International Society of Hypertension guidelines. As a second agent, then you can add either an ACE inhibitor or an ARB. If you need a third-line agent, then you can use the combination of those three.
Et donc, j'utilise maintenant les guides des American Society, ASH et ISH, qui sont l'Amérique, les guides pour l'Amérique et internationalement. Donc, chez un patient de descendance africaine, le premier agent à utiliser serait ou bien un bloqueur des canaux calcium ou bien un diurétique. Et le deuxième agent que vous pourrez ajouter serait un ARB ou un ACE, un inhibiteur. Et en troisième option, vous pourrez mettre les trois agents ensemble.
And then when the hypertension is associated with other conditions, sort of as we've discussed, if you have diabetes, the ACE inhibitor and ARB may be good, especially if you have chronic kidney disease as a renal protective agent. And if there is coronary artery disease, then a beta blocker or an ACE inhibitor or both might be useful. If there's a history of stroke, then an ACE inhibitor or ARB might be useful as a first-line agent. And if there's heart failure, we had already talked about beta blockers, ACE inhibitors or ARBs, and spironolactone being potentially useful agents. And I say that these extra indications for them, they're not just sort of soft indications, they really have mortality benefit in heart failure. So if it is possible to use them, then it should be done.
Et le traitement pharmacologique, si l'hypertension est associée avec d'autres conditions, alors vous pourrez utiliser ces médicaments. Dans le cas d'hypertension et de diabète, vous pourrez utiliser les ARB ou les ACE. Dans le cas d'hypertension et de maladie rénale chronique, Vous pourrez utiliser aussi les ARB ou les ACE. Dans le cas d'hypertension et de maladie de l'artère coronaire, vous pourrez utiliser les bêta blockers avec un ARB ou un ACE. Et dans un cas d'hypertension et d'accident cérébral vasculaire, vous pourrez utiliser un ACE ou un ARB. Et je veux dire que dans ces cas pharmacologiques, ils ont vraiment une influence de baisser la mortalité. Et donc, si vous pouvez les utiliser, il faudra les utiliser.
So in patients that aren't responding to the treatment, there's a few things that you should be thinking of. So you could have them check their home blood pressures to see whether they actually have white coat hypertension or they're better controlled at home and they're just poorly controlled in your office. Definitely ask specifically about adherence with their medications. And a way that I often do it to sort of normalize non-adherence, because it is sort of the norm, is to say, you know, how many times in a week would you miss a dose of one of your medications? And sometimes that gets a little bit, you know, more effect than asking, for example, you don't ever miss any of your medications, do you? Also assessing other lifestyle factors, other sort of priorities in their life, and then also consider secondary cause if you're really having a difficult time treating their hypertension.
Et donc, les obstacles aux soins seraient la vérification des pressions sanguines à la maison, l'évaluation de l'adhésion, ce qui est fait par, ne posez pas la question, vous ne ratez jamais de prendre votre traitement, n'est-ce pas? À la place de ça, vous pourrez demander, est-ce que c'est jamais arrivé que vous avez raté votre traitement pour une raison quelconque? Il faudra aussi évaluer les facteurs de style de vie et considérer les causes secondaires.
Okay, this table sort of puts together an algorithm. I think, you know, we've already been through it. It might be a useful reference for you. It's from the same American Society of Hypertension guidelines, so I won't go through it in detail here.
Et dans ce tableau, c'est un résumé, un algorithme pour résumer le traitement. C'est aussi pris de la Société américaine de l'hypertension et on pourra le lire ensemble.
So barriers to care is very important in chronic disease, and so, you know, we've talked about some of these being a lack of symptoms with hypertension, a lack of awareness of hypertension as a disease or what its consequences are, unstable medication supply, difficulty accessing care, and limitations in medication options due to lack of monitoring capability. And so we didn't talk a lot about this specifically, but I suppose we did say that the spironolactone, the ACE inhibitors, and the ARBs all have a risk of causing hyperkalemia. So they do require some monitoring, and if that's not possible, then we certainly are limited.
Et les obstacles aux soins seraient le manque de symptômes, le manque de sensibilisation à l'hypertension en tant que maladie, la fourniture de médicaments instables, la difficulté d'accéder aux soins et la limite dans les options de médicaments en raison de manque de capacité de surveillance. Et c'est très important de surveiller le patient, surtout s'ils sont en train de prendre un ACE ou un ARB.
So to work a little bit on the bigger picture, I mean, a lot of these barriers to care aren't things that we can all address in our day-to-day practice. So really, there are essential components to reducing non-communicable diseases, including hypertension from a national perspective. And so these include things like having integrated primary care to create access, having appropriate costs set aside for implementing the programs, having the availability of basic diagnostic tests and the medicines that we need to treat optimally, risk factor reduction in the population, workplace-based wellness programs, and progress monitoring.
Et les composants essentiels à la réduction de maladies non transmissibles sont très importants pour réduire l'hypertension à niveau national. Et ceci est une initiative au niveau de tout le pays pour intégrer les soins primaires, les coûts de la mise en œuvre du programme, les diagnostics de base, disponibilité de la médecine, la réduction des facteurs de risque dans la population et les programmes de bien-être au milieu de travail et de...
There is a lot of international interest in hypertension specifically, as well as other cardiovascular risk factors. And so this is just a very broad list of the different organizations that are heavily involved. I won't read them out here. You can look at those yourself.
Et il y a un intérêt international très grand pour l'hypertension en tant que maladie. Et ceci est une liste un peu générale des organisations qui s'y intéressent.
And then I wanted to highlight specifically the Haiti Hypertension Program, particularly as a way of gaining more exposure yourselves in your practice. And so the Haiti Hypertension Program has this sort of best possible practice education model with a variety of certification levels. And so starting off with basic blood pressure measurement, moving on to some public health sort of concepts, basic science of hypertension. And this progresses all the way up to this sort of phase 4, which is called Hypertension Specialist Fellowship Training, in which case you would be, as it suggests, a specialist in hypertension and also really take on a leadership role in driving hypertension treatment nationally.
Et j'ai inclus aussi un programme local qui est le programme d'hypertension à Haïti, qui offre plusieurs traitements et des certifications qui vont de l'entraînement.
Maybe I think Brigitte got disconnected.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Do you want me to try? I can try. Oh, there. Okay, I'm going to try and do that.
Yes. Et aussi un entraînement dans la fellowship qui vous donnera une position de leader dans ce domaine.
So there are lots of ways to get involved, as you can see, in government and advocacy, patient education. There's a lot of established groups, and networking with them may be helpful. And then also a lot of research opportunities, because as you can imagine, despite all of the interest and you know, there is certainly funding available for implementing programs, all of the funding that's coming forth really has to be hand in hand with a progress monitoring program. And so there has to be accountability for that money. And unless there is a sort of network or a system in place to be able to measure what the success is of that funding, then you know, it may not be continued or not provided in the first place, if they don't think that they can create that accountability for the expenditure.
Et il y a plusieurs moyens de s'impliquer dans le gouvernement, dans le plaidoiement, l'éducation du patient, et la mise en réseau avec des groupes déjà établis. Et il y a beaucoup d'opportunités de recherche, ce qui serait très bien afin de créer des infrastructures pour diminuer ce risque.
In summary, there are many ways to lower blood pressure. There is good evidence for the existing guidelines, and so I would encourage you to use them as you're able. However, as we've also said, the goal of treatment is decreased cardiovascular risk, and there's also very good evidence to show that it really is the number that matters. And so if you have to get their blood pressure number down by whatever mechanism you can, it is very likely to also impact their cardiovascular health, even if it's not to this, you know, optimal gold standard level. And so I would just encourage you to accomplish whatever is feasible for you in your setting with that particular patient. Definitely implementing chronic illness management strategies, things like, you know, understanding your patient and treating, for example, with once daily dosing if possible, which might be easier for them to adhere to. And then also there really is this tremendous opportunity to affect health by prevention of devastating individual outcomes such as stroke and heart failure, and also improving healthcare expenditure for future generations.
Et en résumé, il y a de nombreuses façons de diminuer la pression artérielle. Et le plus important, c'est de diminuer le nombre de la tension. Et donc, vraiment, ça a été prouvé, si vous diminuez seulement leur nombre et leur tension, ça pourrait avoir des effets très bons sur leur santé. Essayez de réaliser tout ce qui est faisable dans votre contexte. Il faut mettre en œuvre des stratégies de gestion de la maladie chronique, comme vraiment comprendre votre patient et peut-être même leur donner un seul dosage par jour, ce qui sera plus facile peut-être pour l'adhérence. Et il y a une formidable opportunité d'affecter la santé par la prévention des résultats dévastateurs tels que les accidents vasculaires cérébraux et l'amélioration des dépenses de santé pour les générations futures.
Thank you very much for listening. I'm not sure if everyone there has another lecture or a clinic to rush off to, but I do have extra time to take questions. And thank you very much, Brigitte, for translating. Maybe I'll try one of my own later in French. But please let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to email me about any other questions, opportunities, or anything else that I've spoken about, or references for some of the figures that I've presented. Please feel free to email me at any time.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And oh, you can translate what she said, Brigitte. Sorry.
Donc, je ne sais pas maintenant si vous avez un autre cours ou bien si vous devez être en clinique, mais je serais très contente de vous donner d'autres lectures et de les donner même quelques-unes des miennes en français. And I didn't catch the rest.
Oh, just if they have any questions, tell them to email me anytime. And also that I really would like feedback from the lecturer as well. Any recommendations that you have for future lectures would be greatly appreciated.
Et donc, si vous avez quelques questions, s'il vous plaît, envoyez-moi un email et j'aimerais beaucoup avoir votre feedback sur la lecture que je viens de vous donner.